So when we left off yesterday, we were at chapter 25. We should be able to read we'll do chapter 25, and then we'll say chapter 26 for tomorrow.
He's a really good author.
And what I like that you said that. You said he's a really good author. This is Watt Key. This is Watt Key's first book. It's his debut novel, and it is so well done. So I could not agree more. Chapter 25. It wasn't hard to lift Kit's spirits when he saw the shelter I'd started making. After we set our blankets out to dry, I moved the wall supports in closer since there'd only be two of us. Then we added another layer of magnolia branches and collected marsh grass to dry in the sun and then spread across the floor later. I explained to Kit the importance of building between hills with a creek at the bottom.
Oh.
Do you remember the name of the creek? Go ahead. He named it after his buddy. Kit Creek.
Kit Creek.
He said, we're going to call that one Kit Creek, and Kit's like, sweet. Go ahead.
And when you said, like you said on the video, it makes you seem like it makes you feel like you're in the book.
Absolutely. His show not tell details are fantastic. He does a really good job. Watsky does a great job, and you can listen for him as we read. You don't have to call him out, just mentally make a note of the way he describes things. He does a really good job using all of his senses, or all of your senses as you read.
That's how you know.
All right, so here we go. I explained to Kit the importance of building between two hills with a creek at the bottom. We would be sheltered from the hardest wind and rain of the storms and have plenty of clean water to drink. The leaning pine was green enough so that it wouldn't collapse, and the faint fan of its wrenched-up root structure diverted water as it came downhill. Since the forest was thick around us, we planted some branches to the south where sunlight would provide the longest-lasting heat and light to warm and dry out the shelter. Our entrance was cut out of the southeast wall, where we would catch the most daytime sun. The ceiling of the room was only a few feet from the ground, and the walls were just wide enough for us to sleep in, side by side. I explained to Kit that, unlike the shelter I lived in with Pat, this was above ground and didn't insulate as well. But with such a small space, our body heat would help keep each other warm. When the weather wasn't cold, we'd sleep out on the lookout platform. I was relieved to have our shelter finished. The sky cleared to the blue and the temperature was dropping. A breeze swayed the treetops in our little valley, and I could sense a cold front moving in. But I didn't want to tell Kit in case it worried him. Before noon, we gathered rocks and made a cooking pit about 15 feet away so that we wouldn't catch fire to our shelter. Kit found two logs that he rolled over the pit for our seating and looked from the logs to me with pride. When the sun was directly over our heads, we had a camp area that would have made Pat proud. For lunch, we boiled acorns in a soup can that Kit had found floating in the creek. While he was stringing acorns using a sock, I caught a snapping turtle. I cut the meat from its shell. We boiled it in the same can with some sassafras root. At lunch, the sun mostly dried out our clothes. We were tired after a long morning and lay back in the sun with full stomachs and treetops swishing gently overhead. I looked at Kit and he was smiling at the sky. It's good, isn't it? I said. Kit nodded without looking at me. That storm washed away our trail, I said. Sanders won't be able to get any more dogs after us now. We're going to be okay, Kit. I know, he said. I closed my eyes and napped. Before the sun set, I finished making my bow and 2 arrows. The arrows were made from cattail stems I'd gathered earlier. An owl or a hawk had dropped the carcass of a dead squirrel nearby. I used the leg bones to shape the tips for my arrows, which I tied with some intestine from the turtle. Holding the arrows high over the fire shrank the intestine until the points were secured tightly. My shoelaces didn't make the best bowstring, but they'd have to do until I was able to kill a large animal and make a string from its sinew. I told Kit that we'd be ready to hunt in the morning. The temperature was dropping quickly. We put on our dry jackets. Looking at the blankets, still on the drying sticks, I knew they wouldn't be enough to keep Kit comfortable. I sent him to collect several large stones from the creek. When he got back, we let him heat the coals of our fire until they were hot to the touch. Then we dug a small depression in our shelter floor, and we placed them in it. After covering the floor again with about 4 inches of dirt, we laid down a few inches of dry marsh grass. The stones would remain hot into the next day and keep us warm from beneath that night. We ate what was left of our acorns, turtle meat, and sassafras turtle broth for supper. I could tell Kit was ready to sleep and didn't want to admit it, so I told him there wasn't anything left to do. I spread the 3 blankets on the floor of the shelter. Kit's eyes were half closed as he crawled inside and pulled the top 2 over him. I walked down to the creek with stiff legs and a sore back. I washed the soup can and brought back water for putting out the coals. As the fire hissed and smoked, I sat and listened to the forest and felt proud of all that we accomplished.